Okay, whose side am I really on? The East Coast or the West Coasts? Toronto versus Calgary. In today's video, you're gonna find out.
So sick of love. So sick of I'm tired of always see the better in people or the things that matter. But I never could have thought that in my bag it was you. In the echoes of your lies, dear. Can you hear me harmonize every word that comes out? It almost got the best of me.
Hello, my name is Cornelia and I make videos here on YouTube all about living the life of an entrepreneur, adventuring across Canada, building businesses, and living my best life. If you're interested in any of that kind of content, please like this video, subscribe. I am looking to build my community. I've been here on YouTube for a few years now, and I really love this platform. It's my number one, and I just want to continue to make content for all of you. Today's video is a little bit more unique. I've been releasing a lot of wellness-focused content recently, a lot of candle business-focused content recently, but today I've been wanting to make this video for a really long time, where I dive into my opinions on Toronto versus Calgary. If you are looking at maybe moving across the country or just curious of the differences of the cities, I will tell them to you because I moved from Toronto 3 years ago to Calgary. I had lived in Toronto from the age of like 22. I had lived in Mississauga before that, so just a suburb of Toronto, for 4 years when I went to university. Moved downtown in 2014, and I lived there for about 8 to 9 years. I loved it. I absolutely loved Toronto. But then as I was getting older and when the pandemic hit, a lot changed and I needed to not live there anymore. I was over it. Now, I wasn't sure if I would be staying in Canada. A lot of me wanted to move to the States. I was really interested in moving potentially to LA or New York because of the industry I worked in, but getting a green card is not easy, and working the type of job I wanted to work wasn't necessarily going to be as easy considering I had built all my connections in Toronto. So especially with the pandemic happening, I decided to stay within Canada, and instead of moving to somewhere else in Ontario, because I didn't really know where else I would go. I grew up in Niagara. I love Niagara. I could totally see myself living there. But I didn't really want to move back to like where I had gone to high school. But it just it didn't feel right, like to move back to where I grew up. It's a pretty small town, and it just didn't feel like right for me at the time. I also really love like the Georgian Bay area, Collingwood, that area. So that was another potential, but something told me to go west. So I was gonna move to Vancouver, but then I ended up coming to Calgary and I stayed. So if that tells you anything about Calgary, obviously I loved it enough to not move to Vancouver and to stay here. So ever since the summer of 2021, I have been here and I really love it. So I'm going to tell you which one I like more, Toronto or Calgary. You have to wait till the end of the video to find out, but let's dive right in. The first point is for Toronto. So Toronto is a lot more of a walkable city than Calgary. If you do not have a car, Calgary is a bit more of a challenging city to get around, unless you live in like the downtown core of Calgary. Anywhere else is going to add a lot of time and a lot of pain to get places. Yes, we have a transit system. We have something called the C train that goes through multiple spots through the city. When I lived in the neighborhood called Bridgeland, I was on the C train line and I was able to get into downtown very easily. I didn't have a car for 3 months and I had no issues. It was the summer, I biked everywhere, or I took the train. It was great. In the winter, that probably wouldn't have been as fun. And when I lived in my other neighborhood, Mission, that's even more downtown, even more walkable, that's fine. If you're just looking to like stay in the downtown core, live your life there, go with friends to the mountains, you don't really need a vehicle. And if you want to go maybe down to like one of the malls or whatever, you can just take an Uber. But Calgary is very large. It is a very widespread city, and so my friends live literally all the way west, all the way south, right downtown. I live like more north, so seeing people makes it a little bit more difficult. And so if you are somebody who likes to get around fast, I would say you need a car here. Whereas Toronto is like big, but it's not as spread out. The downtown, or like the hub of Toronto is all very well connected by transit. The subway system is not extensive in compared to other cities in the world, but for Toronto, it's pretty good. I definitely think it needs improvements, but you can get to where you need to be. Ubers are pretty affordable, more or less, depending on where you live in the city, but they're not too bad. And most people don't have cars, so you don't really feel left out. If you want to go somewhere to like Oakville or Burlington or Niagara, you can easily just take the GO train. I do not think having a vehicle is essential in Toronto, and that is why I would give it a point up, because it is just so much better to get around. That is something I miss, is just like walking everywhere. I don't really do that anymore. Okay, now we have a point for Calgary. I would say Calgary is a lot more of a green city. There are so many parks, so many bike paths, so many walking trails, all within the city. I literally was mountain biking in Fish Creek Provincial Park the other day, and I felt like I was in the middle of the country, deep in the woods, camping. Like I was like, whoa, like this is in the city? This is so cool. Like it smells so fresh, it's so green and beautiful. There's a lot of large parks in Calgary, and I would say every neighborhood has their own local parks. Yes, Toronto has that. Don't get me wrong. Toronto has parks. It has walking paths. It has a beautiful waterfront. It has the evergreen brickworks. But if you want to go and do like a bigger hike or really immerse yourself in nature, I would say you have to drive out of the city. I never really felt when I lived in Toronto that any of the green spaces made me feel like I was escaping the city. I kind of just felt like I was in a green space in the city. Whereas Calgary, I literally feel like I'm in a whole other town when I'm in the green spaces, because they're so large and vast, and I really love that. Like Calgary has a really great waterfront trail along the river. You can bike through most of the city, which is amazing, and there's like Bowness Park along the river, Fish Creek Park, Nose Hill. Like they're just a lot larger, and the mountains are very close. So in Toronto, you're gonna drive an hour and a half. Like you could get out to like the farmland or the wineries. More north, you're not gonna find as much country within an hour and a half of the city. But in Calgary, you're like in the middle of the mountains, which is pretty spectacular. So if you're an outdoorsy person, Calgary definitely takes that one. Okay, my third point, and another point for Calgary, would be that the people are nicer in Calgary. And please don't hate me for saying this. I love Torontonians, I love Toronto, but Calgary people are definitely more warm and welcoming. When I lived in Toronto, I had multiple people be like, "You're not from here, are you?" Because I was nice. And they're like, "I can just tell you're not from this city." And I was like, okay, interesting. Whereas Calgary, like, I don't know, I just find like the bus driver is more friendly. When you get on the bus, they say hi to you more. You walk down the road, everyone waves, says hello. It's a lot more of a laid back vibe. Like I found this out east too, like Nova Scotia east, not even like Ontario east, but like everyone says hi to you in Nova Scotia. Everyone says hi to you in Alberta. It's just more of that like small town vibe. Whereas like somewhere like Vancouver, from what I've heard, people are a bit more cold or less approachable, and Toronto too. I had a great experience in Toronto. I mean, I had amazing friends. I never had any issues, but everybody I spoke to who was not from the city, who was visiting, was like, people are cold here. It's hard to make friends. And I think it's just that hustle and grind culture. Like people have their head down a lot, and so they're always on the go. They're always thinking about the next thing. They're working. And whereas in Calgary, there's less of that hustle culture. So I think people are just more tuned in to like being in the moment and just being more friendly. So that's just my personal opinion. So my fourth point is another point for Toronto. So we're tied now. Toronto has a lot more going on event-wise. No matter the time of year, there is something to do. It's just a bigger city. It's more lively. There's more of like a strong heartbeat of the city, I would say. You know, no matter the time of week, downtown is usually pretty busy. You can go out on a Monday night and still have a good time. Like there's just always something going on. I think because of the hospitality industry, like the restaurant scene, the bar scene, some people are always visiting at all times of years. Major hockey, baseball city, soccer, football, like all of that is kind of going on throughout the year. So there's always something to do in that sense. And then I would just say, yeah, like it's just more of a metropolitan hub, you know, similar to New York, right? Like New York always has something going on. Toronto typically always has something going on. Whereas Calgary, I would say, is a little bit more sleepy, which I like in this part of my life. Like, I don't need to be going out all the time anymore, so I don't really care. I definitely think there's lots of opportunity to go out and do things. There's always festivals. Like I said, it's very outdoorsy, so if you want to get up to the mountains, that's really easy. And a lot of people here, I would say, are more interested in like waking up early on a Saturday and going hiking or biking or skiing, whereas in Toronto, your source of entertainment often lies around going out to a bar, a patio, a restaurant, a play, you know, a concert. I would say it's more like nighttime activities. And again, this is like, I don't want to generalize. I just think on average, people are more, like they're gonna get out of the city on the weekends in Calgary and go out to the mountains. Whereas Toronto, most of the time they stay in the city and you can do so much within the core of the city. So I would say if you're somebody who likes entertainment and likes to always have something going on, Toronto definitely wins in that regard. And my fifth point, now I was originally gonna give this to Toronto, which means Toronto would have won, which is funny because I live in Calgary and I actually adore Calgary. But I haven't looked at all of the pros and cons, I've just done 5. But when I thought about it more, I was like, no, it's a tie. So I was gonna say point number 5, Toronto winning, there's more opportunity, more career opportunity. But I take that back. I really think it depends on the industry that you're in. Calgary's industries are growing like crazy. It's an incredibly fast growing city. And so it depends. So if you, like someone like me working in film and television, definitely more opportunity in Toronto. More opportunity in Vancouver as well. I moved to Calgary and was like, okay, my typical production work isn't as frequent here, less room for growth. But starting your own business here, I think has more potential because you have less competition. It's a smaller pond. And that's something I've found, especially as a creative, you're not competing against as many people as you would be in Toronto or Calgary. As an actor, there's less actors here, right? So obviously you're not gonna get as many television shows, but you are competing against a lot less people, which, I mean, I don't know if that's good or bad. That's just like my take on it. You know, the tech industry is really growing in Calgary. Well, obviously there's the oil and gas industry in Calgary. A lot of startups here, a lot of small businesses. So that's really cool. We also have an amazing university, which brings in like a great law program from what I have heard. I'm pretty sure they have a good medical program here too. So there is a lot of opportunity for growth. Toronto is more of that financial hub in the country, I would say. Entertainment industry hub, hospitality hub. Toronto's going to be able to give you everything you need, especially as like a creator. But I do think it depends on the industry. So if you're watching this and you're an actor, I mean, if acting is the only thing you want to do, I would not move to Calgary. But if you are a business owner, if you are a entrepreneur, if you're somebody who, you know, an engineer, 100%, tons of opportunities here. So I really just think it depends on where you're looking for growth. So that is my 5 pros and cons, or my 5 comparisons between Calgary and Toronto, and they've actually tied. They're both great cities. I'm not going to pick a side. Sorry if you thought I was. I am not the type of person to be like, East Coast is better than the West Coast or vice versa. I just never believed in speaking like that about my country, because I love every province. Every province has something to offer. And I really just think it depends on what you're looking for in life. Like Toronto was amazing for when I lived there. I love Toronto. It's such a good city, and I love going back to visit my friends, but I also love Calgary, and I feel very safe here. I feel very relaxed here. There's always something for me to do, and I'm so happy with my decision. But I think it really just depends on your values and what you're looking for in life. So obviously there's a lot of other reasons that you could pick one city over the other. Calgary is obviously a lot more affordable, but that is changing rapidly, unfortunately. I think Toronto's a little bit more open-minded about things, which that can be tough living in Calgary. So yeah, I think do your own research, and if you have any questions, please feel free to comment down below. I love making these kind of videos about, travel and culture. So if there's other questions you have, let me know and I can maybe make another comparison video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day and happy spring. Bye.